You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 184 of Essential Indiana's favorite podcast. I'm Jeremiah Morrell. Today I'm joined by co-host Zach Burcham and co-host Dakota Davis in the same room at the same time.
Today's episode features the return of Mr. Nate LaMar. This is the first time that Nate has been on since episode number 57, so it's been a while.
First time in this building.
Yep, the first time in the studio. I'm not even going to say new studio at this point. It's pretty worn in.
We're like 2 years in.
Yeah. We're going to be talking to Nate about an op-ed that he wrote in the Indianapolis Star that deals a lot with just the military in general. Nate LaMar is the Academy Liaison Officer for East Central and Southeastern Indiana. We're going to be talking to him about Israel. We're going to be talking about American troops stationed in Germany, the Army National Guard, all kinds of cool things. And then towards the end, we're going to get to some national tensions that we've been viewing, kind of also continuing on the conversation from last week's episode. So make sure you stick around to the very end.
There was a fun press conference today. I don't know if you guys caught it yet, but Rudy Giuliani had he had an hour and 45-minute press conference, and I think something started seeping off of him. I don't know if you caught that or not. It was quite exciting. You need to pull it up. While we're looking here, pull it up on your phone and go, oh my God. All right. This show is about our lives in rural Indiana. We're here to push your boundaries and make you think as individuals. Sometimes we'll provoke you. Other times we'll make you laugh. Hopefully you'll always learn something new. Like apparently Rudy Giuliani dyes his hair. It was quite interesting. All right. We just did a fun 20-minute bit or so in the Patreon. I think we covered COVID. Thanksgiving and malaria. Those are my, you may want to show that to Nate too. So he's not left out. He's got a battery that's failing him. So, Patreon I thought went well. I enjoyed it. Learned a lot. You never know quite where these are going to go, producer Chris, but it was there.
It's true.
You must have been rushed for time.
True. I was a little disappointed about them Thanksgiving plans we all had, and the food that we discussed.
Yes. Well,
we learned somebody hates a certain food.
Thanksgiving's been canceled. That's what you need to know. But join the Patreon. You'll get the rest of the info. Dakota, what else do we got to talk about here?
That's right. Did I missed some things? Did we already do Patreon thank yous?
No, I was okay. Teasing. I did the big old tease about what we talked about.
I was just making sure I didn't want to do it twice, but they might deserve it twice. Boss Hog of or Patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty. That's where you can go to support the show on the monthly level. The folks who contribute at $50 or more a month, those are the folks that get a shout out at the front of every episode. The top of that list is Mr. Chris Lamb. Big thank you to Chris Lamb. Then we also have Christy Avery, Jonathan Phillips, and Mr. Anthony Meyer, who is, he's doing his part keeping this country running during the COVID-19 pandemic and making sure that we all still have toilet paper.
He's running that 18-wheeler. Special thanks to Chris Lamb. I know he lost his father this week.
Yeah.
So remember him. And I did get to see another one of the Patreon members this week. Jonathan Phillips and I played. I beat him in pool over the weekend. So I was pretty proud of myself.
You are
some of my best efforts.
You're pretty good at pool.
Surprisingly.
I think that's something that a lot of people that listen might not know about you.
Yeah. Well, when your brother has a pool table, you get drug into it from time to time, so you actually can play here and there. Better than the people that never get to play at all.
Yeah.
All right, Guffey, you got the links in the chat already for folks if they want to buy the merch.
That's right. tchip.com/BHOL 1, 2, 3, or 4. 1, 2, or 3 are all ranging in bottom to top would be lowest to highest in our clothing line, which all has our logos, different things. Number 4 is our masks and neck gaiters.
You got to have those again.
Yep. And then we also have BHOL mug, which is a new, and we never talked to Kyle Hopwood of whether or not that's color changing. I can't remember if I made it color changing or if I made it the cheapest one so people would actually buy it.
I think there is a color changing mug because I keep getting ads as I'm looking at the Indy Star, looking at Nate's big op-ed. I'm getting inundated with ads for a 20% off coupon to buy my own mug, the Boss Hog of Liberty mug on Teachup. It keeps and
it says it's color changing.
I believe so, yeah. It's in white and it's in
color
black.
changing. Yeah. Producer Chris is looking at it right now.
Does it bother anybody else that he says collar?
I noticed it, yeah.
Collar.
Nate, you speak 42 languages. Is that right in any of them?
Depends on how you spell it.
I pronounce both O's. I don't say call-er.
When I think I've told this story before, but my first few years, I was educated in New York State. And some of our textbooks would be Canadian. So the title of one of our textbooks was Colors, Colours. Colors. It was the old English spelling. So that was, you think you had trouble learning how to spell. Try having two different, depending upon what book you were in, words were spelled completely differently.
Yeah, this nation was founded on dropping things that are unnecessary. And unnecessary use are one of them. Favorite, caller.
It might be one of those things. Somebody might say on the show I heard somewhere they said English isn't its own language. It's like 3 or 4 different languages on top of each other's shoulders, wearing a trench coat, trying to act like one language. And I'm being reminded of that as I'm trying to teach my son. Like I've got a second grader, and you just realize that here's the rule. And here's all the exceptions to the rule that you're going to run into every single day, because there's exceptions to every
2,
rule.
2, and 2.
Yeah. And he was just going through. I was like, just ramble words like that off all day. Or here's a word has 2 different meanings and 2 different pronunciations. You can read something or you've read something. They're spelled the same.
And sometimes you'll think that a word has 2. It might have 2 separate meanings, but it's pronounced the same way. But you think that it's a totally separate word. I discovered that on a podcast with who was the guest?
This is 184 of these, yeah. Dakota. I barely remember last week at this point.
Epitome versus epitome.
Epitome, yes.
I thought that they were.
I've never heard. Yes, okay. Epitome is a word. Mm-hmm. Epitome. You've just said that wrong in your head all of the years.
I've read it like the wrong way for like 2 decades, and it's just I don't even understand it. I just was wrong my entire life.
I read the book The Hunt for October in like 7th grade, and I read Rendivius Rendezvous wrong through the entire, and it was in the book all the time. And I was like, oh, I guess. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, that, but like, if I just done that,
it's a great Buick, the Rendezvous.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had a relative that had one. That's what I called it. I called it the Rendivius or something like that. It was an interesting car for her, but.
Nate, you were on 2 episodes. This is your 3rd episode, episode number 57 and 24. Your last episode, you were interviewing for a job for the citizens of Henry County.
Are you here for a job in the Biden administration? Is that why you're here this time?
Episode number 24. You were, I don't know if you knew this at the time, but you were the very first guest that was ever broadcast to Facebook Live on camera.
Wow.
That was the very first time.
And
so before that, it was radio only.
It was audio only,
wasn't
yes.
filmed. Okay.
And you do hold the distinction of being the only guest to leave during the show. Because you had something else going on, but we didn't really explain that to the audience. So it's just like, Nate left. He's gone. He's done now. We took our picture ahead of time, so it was fine. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, that's...
I can't even remember now what I had to leave for, but...
All of the politicians that have come through
probably
these doors.
Perception is Reality with Chris Bilbrey. Best I could guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And you're the first one to ever leave. So, speaking of the other shows you've been on, what have you been doing since after the county council president life?
Well, I continue to serve the county every chance I get. Most recently, I was elected to the Henry County REMC Board of Directors to represent Prairie and Jefferson Townships. And in fact, I took a vacation day today to attend board member training. My first board member training, along with Sam Sparks, a new board member from southwestern Henry County. Right.
Sam's
Greensboro and Wayne Townships.
Yeah.
I work with his son.
Sam's an old 4-H friend of mine.
Yep. I work with his son.
So do you, REMC and 9 Star have they're closely connected. You ever run into Tom Saunders at any of these events?
Sure do. Yeah, I run into Tom all the time. In fact, Tom and I need to meet over lunch before he heads back to session in January.
You need to tell Tom that he needs to come back on the show if you don't mind.
Well, we have to. We have his number. We don't have to have Nate ask him.
I want Nate to bring it up to him.
All we have to do is just call. He's always been down.
I know. He always enjoys coming on.
4 years in a row now at this point.
I just want Nate to bring us up.
I've also enjoyed serving on the Henry County Redevelopment Commission. We have a lot of things in the works. The big problem on our hands right now, and it's a good problem to have, is we need another shell building. Boar's Head North is now what used to be the shell building.
It was the yep. It's coming along.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the next one going to be?
Due north of the current one.
Still in the complex.
Within the industrial park. Yep. That's correct. And in addition to that, something else that the Redevelopment Commission is working on, the house on State Road 3 immediately north of the NDOT site there, that's going to become a child care facility. Primarily for Boar's Head employees, though not exclusively for them. Basically, for anyone who works there in that area who wants to drop their kids off there during the day.
That'll be extremely valuable.
That's going to be converted to a child care facility.
I guess I can't quite picture it. There's a house between Aaron's Auto and the NDOT facility, or another place?
It's the one just north of the NDOT facility.
Okay.
Like it's a brick house, I think.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I knew somebody that lived in that house, and then I think if the state bought it from them, or they ran it maybe, but I think the state at some point got ownership of it, and then something happened and they couldn't do what they wanted with it, and so it's been rented out since. But yeah.
And speaking of NDOT, something we need to work on to make that place viable, so that you're going southbound on State Road 3. Currently, you can't turn left to go into the driveway there. So a culvert will have to be put in and paved over by NDOT.
You need any rebar for that culvert?
No, it would probably just be a little crossover lane. I think they need a big flyover bridge, personally, with some exit ramps. That's the over-engineered answer.
You probably drive like 465 and 56th Street and just because there's like unnecessary bridges in Indianapolis where I can't even figure out why there's a bridge there. Like they'll have a road and you'll go over, and then they'll have the person go to the right and then in a bridge and up over where they were to get to. I'm like, why weren't you?
It's just the state subsidizing Jeremiah's job.
We are starting the 50 bridges in downtown Indianapolis. Just buckle up. The North Splits job is starting next month.
Hopefully, I'm work at home for the next 4 or 5 more months.
That's a 3-year.
I never get into
a 3-year
project.
project.
So, how does the process of getting a shell building built work? Are there grants that you can apply for that, or does the county just have to pay for it up front?
The Redevelopment Commission, we're able to finance it thanks to the TIF districts.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right.
And the last time one was built, it was a partnership, right? That's
correct. With a
Runnable out of Shelbyville built it, and then the county owned it, I believe. That's
correct.
It was a handoff, essentially. One built and handled the financing, and then
that's right.
It was, throughout the process, it was a partnership. It was kind of a public-private deal.
That's correct.
So we just had an election, and there's going to be there's going to be a few new people showing up. No better person to talk about this with than you. What can Bobby Plummer expect her first day?
What can she expect her first day? Probably an introduction to every department head in the county. She's probably already met them, but by introduction, I mean it's going to be more intense than that. She'll have to spend time with each of them, meeting, the people in each department, learning more in depth about what each one does.
Now, is there any kind of training? Like you were talking about the board member training that you're having to do. Is there anything similar that the county officials have to go through?
When I was first elected to county council in 2006, there was no formal training. It was just very informal, being introduced around. However, I think that's been formalized more so over the past few years since the commissioners hired Ann Bankson as the county human resources director.
All right. So there is some kind of
there's an onboarding procedures.
Like a workshop or something?
Onboarding, that's a good term for it.
Oh, in the business world, we got these big words for simple stuff. how quickly does it does somebody come into a county role like that and start to feel comfortable? You served, and you were president of the council almost immediately, right? Or within your first 2
term.
Years. So it was 2 years in.
That's correct. Yeah. When County Council President Bob Veach was defeated in the 2008 primary and then stepped down December 31st, I was then elected in January of 2009 as council president and then reelected for 10 years.
So for the first 2 years, did you feel comfortable in the job immediately, or how long does it take? Because I think what Dakota and I are getting at is we've got a very new county government, right? You've got in the last 2 years, all the county commissioners are fresh and new, first timers. Once we get into January, obviously Ed Yanos has got a couple more meetings left, and then the county council has had massive turnover as well. So just paint the picture for us as what it looks like. It does seem like a lot of institutional knowledge is not there that was. So how does this work?
It's a steep ramp up. I'll put it that way. I mean, you're always going to be learning new things on the job in county government. And I can't stress enough the value of continuing education and the need for the newly elected officials to be involved in the Association of Indiana Counties and then its subsidiary organizations, specifically the County Commissioners Association and the Indiana County Council Association, and the training that they provide.
And that's where you get the continuing education to understand how other areas operate.
That's
You're not
correct.
reinventing the wheel.
Do you have to already know Robert's Rules of Order whenever you get in there?
It's helpful. It's very helpful. But I respect the AIC so much, as well as its national organization, the NACO, the National Association of Counties, that I maintain alumni membership in them.
Oh, incredible.
Cool.
So, and then walk us through everybody understands the county council passes a budget. County commissioners are the executive, but those boards also they hire their own attorneys. They have staff. They're responsible for, the commissioners are responsible for all of those department heads.
That's correct.
And those folks are they at will? Are they political appointments? So they're just are they all different? I guess
non-elected department heads are at will employees.
Okay, and then we've got I guess auditor, the judges.
That's correct.
The
elected
recorder,
department
the elected
heads.
department heads, treasurer,
right,
sheriff. There are 5 or 6 constitutional offices as well.
Correct.
So, whenever you came on episode 24, we were hoping that you were going to announce a run for office. Are you announcing anything this time? You going to try to defeat Diego for Secretary of State?
Diego's been running for Secretary of State for quite some time now, and I think he has the upper hand. But no thanks. I'm not interested in Secretary of State. One should never say never, but
it's a risky job. Sometimes you go to jail. You've really got to be careful.
We'll see what pans out in terms of redistricting. I don't anticipate Tom Saunders retiring anytime soon, and so we'll see what's done with state senate redistricting.
Yep.
All right.
Right now, the Henry County is covered by the northern third of Henry County is in Doug Eckerty's. Oh my goodness, it's
Mike
changed.
Gaskell.
Mike Gaskell now.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Get with the times, Jeremiah. 2 years in, Mike Gaskell represents the northern, which is the area of the county that you live in.
That's correct. And that's a district that is 60% Madison County, 26% Delaware County, and only 14% Henry County by registered voters.
Absolutely. So, what you got next, Dakota?
Next, we're going to be talking about, if you are a member of the Patreon, patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty, you get show notes ahead of time. And there's a little link where it'll take you to the op-ed in the Indianapolis Star that Nate wrote. So if you want to click on that, if you're a Patreon member, and follow along with us, and that's what we're going to be talking about next.
So how does this work? Did the Gannett folks call you up, or you said, I'm passionate about this and I want to write about it? Because I think I saw it in the Muncie Star Press.
That's
and then
correct.
I realized it was in the Indy Star. I'm like, holy cow, Nate's big today.
The Muncie Star Press, they've had me write for them for years. But being that, like you said, that they're now a Gannett newspaper, often what's published there will be published in the Richmond Palladium item almost all the time, and occasionally the Indianapolis Star.
Have you checked to see if you're in USA Today yet?
I wish.
Or the
That would be
Tennessean.
nice.
It could be anywhere. Gannett is the largest newspaper publisher in the country, so they're all over the place.
I like that they keep, this is kind of off topic, but I like that Gannett keeps the theme of all their websites the exact same. Because, I mean, you're reading the Muncie Star, but you could also be reading USA Today.
I have my quarrels with the Indianapolis Star and some of the Gannett papers as well, but yeah, the interface is the same.
I think it's good.
I think their motorsports coverage has been just pathetic lately.
Their COVID-19 coverage has been kind of crappy too. But Nate's
But Greg
op-ed,
Doyle works there, so it's good, and Nate's thing was great.
great. So, like we said at the top of the show, you are a military academy liaison officer for East Central and Southeastern Indiana. What exactly does that mean?
That's a fancy title for West Point recruiter for the congressional district. That's my territory. So I deal with high school guidance counselors, college fairs, and media in the 19 counties of the 6th congressional district, just promoting West Point primarily to high school seniors.
And so, Dakota, you're too old now.
He said primarily.
Primarily. You've been doing this a while. This didn't just start with Congressman Greg Pence. You've been in this role for quite some time.
That's correct. Now, let me make the distinction, though. Okay, my service on the the Service Academy Advisory Board, that's actually a civilian appointment.
Okay.
So I wear one hat when I do that for the congressman, and I've been doing this since the David McIntosh days.
That's what it's
for every
yeah.
member of Congress from this district. But then when in uniform, that's when I'm the MALO, the West Point recruiter.
Okay.
So, as a West Point recruiter, are you active duty in the military?
No,
in that role?
This is an inactive reserve position.
Okay.
Similar to a guard reserve. Yeah, it's
Okay.
There
purely
is
volunteer.
very little risk of you having to do something dangerous.
That's correct. Yeah.
Depends on the high school, though.
Good point.
In Laurel, it may get dangerous, I suppose. But there's
So, who's eligible to attend the West Point Academy?
You have to be you have to be at least 17 years old and no older than 21 the
So
day
I
you
am
enter.
out.
So generally that's July 1st of every year, and these same rules apply to all the service academies. West Point, the Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, the Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs, and Kings Point. That's the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy.
I did not know about
17 to 21. That's the age range to enter. So generally, it's high school seniors that enter. But on occasion, we'll have a prior serviceman enter, with combat experience already under their belt. A good example of that was Caleb Marsden. Caleb Marsden graduated from West Point this past spring. He was from rural Rush County. I want to say Arlington.
I'm very familiar with Arlington.
Yes.
That's where my folks live.
But yeah, Caleb was prior service. He was enlisted in the Army, I believe, 3 years prior to getting a direct appointment into West Point. He didn't have to go to the prep school first or anything like that. And it's very difficult to get a direct appointment from the enlisted Army ranks right into West Point. But Caleb did it.
Very impressive.
That's very neat.
So how was your path to West Point? How did you get how did this happen for you?
I had one of my dad's first cousins, Mike Bowers, who was Newcastle High School class of 1960. He went to West Point. And so growing up, I just heard stories about it from him. And by the time I was in 7th grade, I made my decision then. I want to go to West Point.
So you didn't have to be recruited. You recruited the recruiters at that point. you were set. You're focused on the goal.
So
That's right.
what is West Point like? What are you going to get at West Point that you don't get from your secondary occupational training after basic training in the Army?
4 years of hell. That's what you get. No, it is a very difficult 4 years, especially the first year. Okay. But it just provides a military environment 24/7, whereas, other commissioning sources like ROTC. I mean, I'm not criticizing the Reserve Officer Training Corps, but, it's not a military 24/7 environment. If you're doing ROTC, for example, at Ball State or IU or Purdue, okay. Likewise, officer candidate school, that's just, 90 days. And then you're, commissioned a second lieutenant. That's the difference between them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, West Point is just 4 years of a 24/7 military environment.
But then you're also attending classes for what your job will be.
That's correct.
As a commissioned officer.
That's right. Well, yes and no, because your major at West Point may not necessarily be what your branch or MOS is. That's the difference between the two.
Okay, very cool. Is it pretty standard? This question, I have a childhood friend of mine graduated from West Point in the spring, and like we were talking about before the show, is it common for a lot of folks to enter Ranger School right after West Point?
It is, especially those who branch infantry. It's basically a requirement if you're going to be an infantry officer. In addition, you can go to Ranger School during the summer between your junior and senior years at West Point.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Let's see. You also wrote about Israel and the newest pact they have with the UAE. And you said that it was a big win for stability in the Middle East and hopefully decreases terrorism.
UAE, for those that aren't able to Google it, is the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to expand on that topic a little bit. How is it going to bring about stability in the Middle East and by extension less terrorism for America?
The Abraham Accords are what this treaty is called, and it's not only between Israel and the UAE, it's just the UAE was the first signatory to the Abraham Accords. Bahrain was second, and Sudan was third, and there will be others, but I'll get to that in a minute. What it represents is more Arab nations willing to make peace with Israel. Egypt first made peace with Israel in 1977 in the Camp David Accords. And not a lot of people realize this, but the impetus behind this was when Anwar Sadat, who was president of Egypt at the time, he had a son killed in the Yom Kippur War with Israel in 1973. And so that started changing his heart, believing that, look, we as Egypt should be making peace with Israel. So that's where it all began. Unfortunately, Anwar Sadat then, paid for that by being assassinated a few years later by those who were against the peace process.
Right.
Jordan established peace and diplomatic relations with Israel in 1994. Now,
that was the Clinton, Yasser Arafat, and
that's correct. Yeah, that was part of that.
Right.
What the Abraham Accords represent, though, if you look at it under the surface, it represents not only business interests in the region, because the United Arab Emirates is the business hub for basically the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia, Dubai in particular. Dubai could be likened to being the Singapore of that
Asia,
part of the world.
Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. And in addition, what this represents is Israel tying itself with the Sunni Arabs, the Sunni Muslims, against the Shiite Crescent. The Shiite Crescent is Iran, a plurality of the population of Iraq, a large portion of Syria's population, and a large portion of Lebanon's population, as well as Yemen. Okay. The Sunni Muslims and the Shiite Muslims have been enemies for 1,500 years, or 1,300 years, excuse me. And so Israel is casting its lot with the mentality being in that part of the world, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so Israel has decided, as has the region, Iran is a worse enemy of Israel than these Sunni Arab countries are. And likewise, these Sunni Arab countries have always feared Iran and the instability that it has sown within their countries. So that's another reason for it.
From the non-interventionist view, or the non-interventionist perspective, what our folks have trouble understanding is why the United States has to have a role in these conversations. Why is the United States military or the United States diplomatically in the conversation? And that's what I'd love to have you expand on.
Sure. That's a very good question. I'm of the opinion that it is in our interest to maintain a military presence in the Middle East because it is still an unstable region. The Abraham Accords will help make it more stable and hopefully allow more U.S. troops to be sent home. Not all U.S. troops, but more.
So if you're looking at your view, your foreign policy view, what folks at a national level that our audience might be aware of would you say that you most align with? If you were to pick a couple of national thought leaders on this, that would be, if you're looking at Nate, these are the people that, okay, if I understand this person, I probably understand where your perspective is coming from.
I've always been a Dick Lugar Republican. Okay. Not only because he appointed me to West Point, for which I was always grateful to him, but I respected his foreign policy views better than anyone else.
Okay.
All right. So then we also talked about Germany in the op-ed, or you did. And you talked about the current administration, Donald Trump's administration, withdrawing troops from Germany. And you kind of have a personal connection to Germany because you stayed in Germany in your time in the military, correct?
That's correct.
And
so I was stationed there.
You said that there are 34,000 troops currently there.
That's correct.
If you look at it on the surface, like I have done, is you go, why do we need so many people in Germany? But this is also something you talk about in the article that I thought was extremely interesting. I'll let you kind of take over.
On face value, one would think, why should the wealthiest nation in Europe and why should the largest nation in Europe, in the middle of Europe, surrounded by friendly countries, why should a country like Germany have that many American soldiers there protecting it? Okay, that is a rather dated Cold War thought process about Germany. Okay. The truth is, just because 34,000 troops are stationed in Germany doesn't mean they are protecting Germany. Germany is but a staging area. To quote my friend, Senator Todd Young, Germany is a lily pad for U.S. soldiers to then be deployed elsewhere more rapidly than they could be if they had to come in from being stateside. And so, just because you're stationed in Germany doesn't mean that you serve in Germany. Often Germany is where your dependents are stationed, where your spouse is stationed while you are downrange, serving in Afghanistan, Kuwait, or increasingly on the African continent, such as Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti.
And also you said we're expanding across Europe because of some hostile seeming relations with Russia, correct?
That's correct. Russia hosted the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, and you may recall right after that, within, I think, 2 weeks after the Sochi Olympics ended, Russia invaded the Crimean Peninsula and just took it away from the Ukraine.
Correct.
And the best the Obama administration could come up with was sanctions on Putin and a few of his fellow oligarchs. And so because of that, Eastern Europe is very worried right now about Putin's saber-rattling, in particular Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, but not just them.
So these are former Soviets.
That's correct.
In the 80s, they were all in the USSR.
That's right. And not a lot of people are aware of this, but there are now small U.S. military bases in Poland, Hungary, and Romania.
So,
and
what's the logic? I guess, and that's the what folks on the libertarian side will challenge is saying, we have this imperial nation where we're in 100 and some countries with bases. What's the counter argument to that as to why it's important for the U.S. to be in Poland, right?
The counter argument is that historically Poland has been the battlefield of Europe for hundreds of years. It's flat. It's very easy to cross, not only with swords and horses, but, with modern day tanks.
Sure.
Poland has always been just the the battlefield of the continent.
It's the crossroads of Europe, right?
Exactly.
Indiana's the crossroads of America, and Poland that's
right.
The same thing.
And in addition to Eastern Europe, the Nordic countries are very afraid of Putin as well. There was an article in The Economist about 3-4 weeks ago how even Sweden, a neutral nation, which is not a member of NATO and was never a member of the Warsaw Pact, Sweden is in the process of tripling its defense budget.
Wow.
What are you thinking over there, Zach?
I mean, I knew about the kind of the lily pad thing in Germany because a lot of times you'll hear if somebody gets injured when they're deployed, that's where they'll end up. They go to Germany. And I know a guy, Facebook guy, there's, all kinds of different communities on Facebook. There's a guy who just recently got back and he spent years, he lived in Germany. Mm-hmm. He raised his family in Germany. He just got back to Texas, but he was just bouncing around driving a Chevy Tahoe in Europe for like a couple of years. And that was just, I think that when you're there, there's areas where you think you're in America if you're on the base, because they've built an American city there essentially for the military personnel to be there.
It's kind of like us going down to Oldenburg, Indiana.
Yeah.
A German town here.
My experience in Germany was atypical. I was one of 40 Americans on a German base, a base of 2,000 Bundeswehr soldiers or German army soldiers. I was not on a U.S. base. And thankfully, the Army, provided me good training prior to that. I was sent to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California for their 9-month German fluency program.
Boy, that's a terrible place to have to go, huh? Northern California for 9 months of training.
And
on the ocean.
Right. So after DLI, the Army then sent me to counterterrorism school at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to equip me for my mission as the liaison officer between the 40 Americans and their 2,000 German hosts. In addition to that, I provided counterterrorism training throughout the NATO group in that sector in Germany. But it was a good experience because, it forced me to live on the economy, so to speak. There was no base, so there wasn't base housing. The Americans in this unit had to blend in the local culture, not only for security reasons, but just, there was no crutch to fall back on.
Right.
There was no PX to go to. There was no, Burger King. Large American bases around the world have the Post Exchange, the Commissary, and a Burger King. They all do. And increasingly, they're adding Popeyes as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Popeyes.
Kuwait even had a Burger King.
Yes.
It surprises me it's Burger King and not McDonald's.
Yeah.
It really is surprising.
Burger King has the Army
contract, right?
At least. I don't know about Navy or Air Force bases, but they have the Army contract at least.
Huh. How cool.
I don't know. You just go to the chow hall of the Air Force bases and you're dining at a 5-star restaurant. It's ridiculous.
So how long were you in Germany?
Just a year, and then my unit deactivated.
1 year.
So what kind of work would they be doing? Was it training, or it was the counterterrorism where you were essentially a communications arm to
We
the
had
Germans?
custody of battlefield-level nuclear weapons, and so that's why my unit was deactivated. When Reagan and Gorbachev signed the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, it spelled an end to units such as mine.
Huh. How interesting. So you were there right towards the end of the wall.
That's correct. I arrived in Germany after the wall opened, but still it was intriguing to go into the former East Germany when a lot of the wall and a lot of the Iron Curtain was still up and had not yet been torn down.
Wow, that's wild. That's so cool. Have you been back since?
Yes, sure have.
Oh, cool. Is it like a totally different world now?
No trace of the wall now. No trace of I stand corrected. There's one part of Berlin where they have a section of the wall up, maybe 100 yards or so.
It's very similar to going down to 14th Street at the old Chrysler factory, where you got the
corner,
monument, where the
corner of the building
original
still
auto
stands.
assembly facility from the Maxwell.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's pretty neat. What a cool job. So how many languages do you actually speak?
I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm near fluent in German and French. When I'm back in German and French-speaking environments, after about a week or so, my fluency returns.
Oh,
and then
cool.
Arabic I can hold my own in. I had 5 semesters of Arabic and 1 semester of Hebrew at West Point, but I'm by no means fluent in either one.
Which one's the hardest to learn?
Arabic, by far.
Really? Even harder than Hebrew?
Yes.
All right.
Sure is.
I'll take your word for it.
When are you going to take up Russian?
I had a 6-week Russian crash course years ago, just a 6-week night class for familiarity. But, that was towards the end of the Cold War. But with that being said, I do think that we need to keep our eye not only on China, but also on Russia.
Yeah, it is increasingly more so.
Speaking of China, recently the RCEP was signed, the Regional Cooperative Economic Partnership. That was China's attempt to take leadership in a trade pact, an East Asian trade pact that also includes Australia and New Zealand. And that's because Donald Trump announced on Inauguration Day that he was pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Right, which was 12. Was it 12 countries in the TPP? Something like that.
I think 17 total. Okay. Yeah. The RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that's China and 14 countries. But although China is pushing this, and the leaders of these countries may be pushing it, the legislatures of each country need to adopt it. And there is some question as to whether Australia, Thailand, and Japan will accept it.
So with that being
Hopefully
said,
they won't. But
are you gonna be buying up a Huawei phone anytime soon?
That's the Chinese cell phone that's available. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Huawei phone is the ripoff of Apple technology.
Are they banned in the United States?
They are currently banned.
I was
in
going
the
to say
United
you can't get one.
You cannot even. You can buy one, but it's prohibited for any cell service providers
You cannot
to give you
activate it.
service. Correct.
yeah, in my opinion, the United States pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership was the biggest foreign policy failure of the Trump administration. However, the Abraham Accords would be the biggest foreign policy success of the Trump administration.
Why do you think it was a failure?
It was a failure because China has stepped in and filled the vacuum.
If you're not going to participate, they're
Yeah.
going to set things on their terms at that point.
That's correct. And this is all part of the Belt and Road Initiative.
The TPP came along in the Obama administration.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. This is all part of China's Belt and Road Initiative to get as many primarily developing third world nations on its side as possible. And this just played into China's hand. But I did mention, the Abraham Accords, in my opinion, are the biggest foreign policy success of the Trump administration. And earlier I mentioned that they're not done yet. After the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan, I predict that next we're going to see Qatar join, Oman, Kuwait, and possibly Morocco. Saudi Arabia will eventually join, but they'll probably be the last to join the Abraham Accords.
Why do you think they would be the last?
Saudi Arabia is under so much pressure from Muslim fundamentalists as the home of Mecca and Medina, and because of that, although the Saudi king and the royal family would be agreeable to do this, they know that a large portion of their population and a lot of the Wahhabi clerics, a lot of the Wahhabi Muslim clerics who exert undue influence within Saudi Arabia would be reluctant for Saudi Arabia to sign on with Israel.
Is it because their population are they pretty split between the two sects of Muslims?
It's not that so much, although I will say in Saudi Arabia's eastern province, where a lot of the oil is, Dammam, Dahran, that area, there is a large Shiite population. But the vast majority of Saudi Arabia's population is Sunni. But they're Sunni fundamentalists who oppose Saudi Arabia getting in bed with the Zionist entity. That's what they call Israel.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these people refuse to recognize Israel as a country.
As a country, yeah.
So you alluded to the trade uncertainty that happened in the Trump administration. I don't know where you're allowed to be politically at this point. I'm from the Libertarian Party, and we're generally are accepting that the Trump administration is coming to an end. I don't know inside the Republican side if that's accepted across the board yet or not. But if there is that change, do you think that a Biden administration will start to maybe roll back into the TPP and other similar arrangements for economic certainty for the U.S.?
I would like to see that happen. It is in the best interest of this country, but unfortunately, it could be too late. Like I said, China stepped in to fill the vacuum.
Right.
But let's just hope that the legislatures of Australia, Thailand, Japan, and maybe a few others reject the RCEP.
Yeah, and then you have the chance to swap it back out.
Right.
What about the replacement of NAFTA? You talked about. And for those that don't know, Nate's been doing international business for ages. So other than the foreign policy side, this is also another expert area for you. The U.S., Mexico, and Canadian trade deal that's come through in the Trump administration.
The USMCA is the new improved NAFTA. It levels the playing field more so, in particular in internet commerce, which was non-existent in the early 90s when NAFTA came into being.
Sure.
In addition, it doesn't provide Canada with the protectionism that it had for its timber industry and for its dairy farmers.
I say the dairy industry I've been hearing about from the Canadians has been, I hear a lot from the College of Agriculture and from the USDA, and the dairy portion of it was just apparently a massive issue where they weren't behaving well according to the U.S. farmers.
That's correct. In addition, there are large provisions within the USMCA for automotive workers in Mexico to be paid, I believe, a minimum wage that is $12 to $15 an hour, whereas currently, they might be paid $3 to $5 an hour.
So with that, what it does is it starts to balance out the labor savings that drove so many assembly jobs and component jobs and that were former UAW jobs that would have been in our part of the world that went to Mexico.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
In the 90s and early 2000s. That's one of the reasons why Trump did win Michigan previously, right?
Right.
And we'll see what happens this time. Dakota, you've got a section in here we wanted to get before we jump into the national stuff too much.
Yep.
Are you ready? You can't go to West Point, so now you're ready to join the National Guard. This is why it's in the show notes.
Yep. I'm ready to go. Listen, my barber, Austin, he's got a good thing going where he's got his own business. He's in the National Guard. I made some tables for Cade Coger, and my business page has been bombarded with messages and requests. I want to see if this works out for me. So,
Chris, do you have any advice for him while you're over there real quick?
Don't go infantry. You'll break your knees and you'll break your back.
I have a lot of friends. Well, I say a lot. I have 4 friends who are currently or just recently left the Army National Guard. And I know that so obviously it is a big thing of interest for young people in this community to join. So I kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit. But then also just like get into the specifics because we only ever hear of, high school students. After I leave high school, I'm going to join the Army National Guard. You never hear about anybody else. But I would assume that, I would assume that if I went to an Army National Guard recruiter as a healthy 25-year-old male, they wouldn't be like, you're too old.
You're right. You can enter the National Guard. Well, in fact, you can enter active duty, reserves, or National Guard anytime before your 36th birthday. So, 35 years old, that's the maximum to enter.
We're out, Zach.
That's the maximum to enter. So, it would be great if you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only, 3 years away from peak physical performance as a male.
Just saying, do 6 years, get a $20,000 sign-on bonus, 10 years after 10,000 after 3 years, 10,000 after you get MOSQ'd. It's not bad.
Sounds like I'd be rolling in it. But can I still keep my job?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you can. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm in.
Most
ask Travis White, you'll end up in Iraq.
Most employers are accepting of National Guard or Reserve service.
But
I won't say all employers
there's
are,
a
but the vast
program,
majority
right?
are.
There's some special program, third party, that is headed by the Army National Guard to work with employers.
It's called ESGR, Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, and they track employers who don't comply. In other words, employers who...
So it's like a union rat list.
When they say, "Hey, yeah, you can go play Army, but you have to use all of your vacation time first," and then if you don't do that right, then we're going to fire you. Those are the folks that they're chasing.
The ESGR monitors Guard and Reserve members' progress with their employer. You know, if they're passed over for a promotion, for example, or if they're forced to use vacation time rather than being given the time off, and things like that. So that's right.
Where is the Army recruitment office for this area?
Newcastle no longer has one. I think it's downtown Muncie. I think that's the nearest Army
That's
and
correct.
Army National Guard recruitment office.
Yep.
So, okay. What is the difference between the Army National Guard and the Indiana National Guard?
Okay, the Indiana National Guard, when I say the Army National Guard, I mean all of the state-level National Guard.
It's the exact same,
Indiana
Dakota.
National Guard.
The exact same thing?
Yeah.
Then there is the Indiana Air National Guard.
That is different.
What is the difference there?
That's
the
Air Force.
You report to the lieutenant.
Yeah, it's the
governor
Air Force
instead of the governor.
version. Yeah.
So someone saying I'm in the National Guard and someone saying I'm in the Indiana National Guard, they mean the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay.
You both fall under. So the difference is that there's not a real difference, but the Indiana National Guard and the Army National Guard, Indiana, the governor has control over you, but you can still be federalized, and then you fall in under the regular Army umbrella. Is basically what it is.
That's correct. The other thing is you don't necessarily have to be an Indiana resident to join the Indiana Guard. You know, depending on what unit you want to affiliate with based on your specialty, your MOS, you could join the Ohio National Guard.
It's true. The only thing is that you'll have to make the trip once a month, 1 weekend a month to the unit. Generally.
And then 2 weeks in the summer.
15 days. Yeah.
We're talking about me, but I really don't have an interest in doing this. But I'll keep the conversation rolling. For
I mean, you did wear the green shirt.
Yeah. So how could I join?
You're terrifying the listeners right now, going, "What are we going to do without Dakota for 2 more weeks in the summertime?"
We have Zach.
Zach's got bath time concerns. It's going to be a nightmare.
That's the only chair I haven't sat in so far, is Jeremiah's chair.
You can do a show next week without me if you want to. I'll be in Georgia.
How can I? I've never been in the military, so obviously I would have to go to some type of basic training.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I would have to do all of those things. But see, like my friend, we'll take Quentin Thompson, for example. He joined the Army National Guard right after high school. And he was immediately sent to El Paso and lived there for 4 years. I mean, but if you're also telling me I can keep my job here, but my job doesn't exist in El Paso. So how can I keep my job here for 4 years but not live in this state?
If he was sent to El Paso for 4 years, then it sounds like he got a full-time National Guard job.
Yeah.
Yes,
ARG.
he did. Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
That's not the 2 week.
Right.
That's not the standard typical person.
No. Those are the vast majority. Chris, what would you say? 99% of those who join the National Guard are just 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the
it might be
basic training,
95, but it's still it's a really high number.
the basic training time period commitment for those folks is it 4 weeks or 6 weeks?
No, basic training
It's 8.
Yeah,
Yeah,
8 weeks, and then when you go to MOS AT training, which is not AT but AIT, which is your advanced individual training, that's when you become MOS queued, and that time length can vary depending on what your MOS is. Like
And
with
for
me in infantry,
listeners
it's
who
like,
aren't familiar with MOS and MOSQ, that means military occupational specialty, and then you become military occupational specialty qualified.
as soon as you
MOSQ.
graduate advanced individual training. Yeah.
So essentially what they're recommending is if you're going to do this, you need to quit this career, go do that one for like 3 or 4 months, and then pick it back up.
So, but if they are a guard friendly employer, then that means that they guarantee that they won't refill your position.
That's
yeah,
correct.
Yeah, they'll hold your job until you get back.
See, they just don't have to pay you, obviously.
No,
Yeah.
no. But you get paid
Anyways.
from the Guard or the Army. But
I have to compare those if they can pay my bills.
Compare the options.
hey, Dakota, you're taking a pay cut.
Yeah. Well, based on
But you do get that sweet signing bonus twice.
Yeah,
Right.
you can get depending on
depending on the job.
the job. You have to certain
So
jobs.
I bet they're going to make you an electrician.
I guarantee it.
they won't make you anything. You get a pick.
I bet you'll choose electrician.
Depends on that sign-on bonus.
Just get a bucket truck that's a
I
different
think
color.
I actually think the National Guard here in Indiana just had a cyber security division battalion open up.
One of my West Point classmates, Greg Conti, he and this other grad who I don't know, they were the founders of the Army's newest branch, the cyber branch.
Yeah.
All right, Nate.
Well, this all sounds great.
So Dakota joined the Army. This was quite the effort. What's going on in national politics? What are you preparing for the Biden administration, or did you watch were you aware of the Giuliani hour 45 press conference today? What's legitimately? I know we're being facetious here, but
I would say
what's your take, man?
I would say at this point, the Biden administration is inevitable. Even if the Trump campaign were able to win enough lawsuits in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, it won't be enough votes to make the difference.
Right.
Michigan, the vote difference was 145,000. I seriously doubt that there will be that many ballots disqualified. From what I'm hearing in Georgia, where the margin is 14,000, there were maybe 300 ballots thrown out.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like the barrier is just too high, right?
And
to get there.
Wisconsin, the Trump campaign would have had to have spent $8 million to recount all of Wisconsin. As it turns out, they're just doing $3 million to, I believe, recount just Milwaukee and maybe Madison.
Right.
They have to pay this to pay people to count? Is that why are they having to pay?
Anytime there's it varies from one state to the next, but anytime there's a recount, the side demanding the recount has to pay a fixed amount per precinct.
Unless it's within an automatic range where it's extremely close, then you have to pay.
Mm-hmm. Like in the 2018 primary, since I just barely lost, I was encouraged by several people to do a recount because I was, that
Extremely close.
Now, I decided against.
In 2000, there was an issue, and ultimately this is what the Supreme Court decided on, was that they were asking for recounts in only certain counties in Florida, and the Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. If you're targeting or looking for votes in only one area, that's a problem. Do you see that as being an issue in Wisconsin if they're saying, hey, I only want to look at the big cities?
Well, again, it's probably a states' rights issue.
Right.
And this must vary from one state to the next. Maybe the Supreme Court overruled Florida.
Right.
But from what I hear, the Trump administration backed down from 8 million to 3 million to just target certain parts of Wisconsin.
And they totally gave up on Arizona, right?
Yes, from what I've heard. Yeah.
So
because you may recall, Arizona was first called for Biden. Then the AP and CNN and a few others have retracted it. They said, no, Arizona's still up for grabs. Then Arizona was able to more quickly conduct its recount, and then it went back to Biden.
So we originate this show in Newcastle, Indiana, the 6th congressional district, which was once represented by Mike Pence, our congressman, our governor, and now our vice president. So we often look at things through the eyes of, okay, what's next for Mike Pence? How is he navigating this? Because most people are looking at it inevitably where their administration is coming to an end. So he's looking for a path to possibly run again himself in 2024. The president saying, if I lost, maybe I'll run again myself. Maybe Don Jr. is going to run. This is incredibly muddy for his political career.
David McIntosh quoted, was in Howey Politics, Indiana, either yesterday or the day before, saying something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, Mike Pence is so loyal to Donald Trump that if Trump wants to run again in 24, Mike Pence will be there for him. My advice to Mike Pence, whom I've known personally for 30 years, I've been in his home, he's been in my home. My advice to him would be your own man.
Yeah.
You run for president in 24. Don't worry about what Trump wants to do.
Yep. That's the
advice.
The last era,
Pence.
last generation. Do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been wild. It's just, this is so surreal watching, I can remember, gosh, this is probably the 5th or 6th presidential election that I've truly been very, very aware of and watched. And this isn't what happens, right?
Right.
You normally have the concession speech and, George Bush. We've seen a whole lot of George Bush wishing Bill Clinton, you're my president now. Your success is my success. And I just don't know if we're going to get that moment. That's the part that I'm looking at that I don't know.
It's one of the interesting things that's popped up, and it's really like it's what America is about. Is you seeing all these pictures of transitions and of the families mixing because, like, I saw one when Obama went in office, and he wasn't in the picture. It was the wives and the kids, and they were hanging out because she was like Michelle was concerned about her kids, and George W. Bush's kids weren't home; they were older, but Laura said, I'll call him in, and brought him home. And then they just gave him like the tour and it was like showing him how to, like, here's a great spot to slide down a banister. And it was just like giving him like the intro course. And you're seeing that stuff. And I saw where Obama said, can you arrange for me to have dinner with all of the living presidents? And they had lunch together. And it was just like, you see that. And like, that's the key part right here is you want to see this.
That's the peaceful transfer of power that we pride ourselves on.
That's right.
And it's happened unless there's been an incapacitation or a death. It's been seamless, essentially seamless, even in Clinton to Bush, right? Which was the most hostile version that I can remember in my lifetime. And we're not seeing it. I don't know if at some point if that's going to change or if it's going to be until January 20th.
I took my younger daughter, Lexi, to the inauguration on January 20th, 2017. And up there on the dais, standing right next to the Trumps and the Pences were Hillary and Bill Clinton.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just crazy surreal, man. I don't know.
As well as the Obamas.
Yeah, and the Bushes. Yeah, the Bushes, all of them. The whole crew was there. That's
what happens if between now and January 20th, if Biden dies.
What books are you reading?
I mean, I just
we're all on the watch list now, just because.
Is there a plan in place?
I
would expect that you'd have President Harris.
I mean, I really don't know.
That would be my expectation.
I would assume so. Constitutionally, I don't know the vacancy, how quickly it needs to be filled. I do know when Nixon resigned and Gerald Ford replaced him, there were a few months there where there was no vice president.
And there have been times before the 25th Amendment came into place where there was no mechanism to replace a vice president.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So we had terms where Chester Arthur was the president.
Mm-hmm.
He would never had a vice president, right? After McKinley, was it McKinley that died? That you got Chester Arthur and then
Garfield.
It was just
James Garfield. Yes. So there was nobody.
It was just assumed that if the president then died, then the speaker.
Then that's where you go down the constitutional succession.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be what would happen here.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, my question was because he's not the president yet.
No, but you have a ticket that's elected. Essentially, you've selected electors, and those electors are pledged. They're going to get certified. So if the top of the ticket wasn't there, they're still going to certify Biden. If Biden's not there, then Harris is going to end up being your president. If your watch list question comes to fruition.
It's just a legit question.
Nate has a political career to take care of, and you're just ruining it. Ruining it. He's going to get thrown off the REMC board before he even completes his training.
That was a Facebook comment. That's one of the ones like, I'm scrolling on by that one. But, I mean, it's an interesting time, and you're seeing, like, I saw there's protests in front of the White House, and there's two different groups, and I was like, I commented, somebody posted, and I don't know what they were looking for, but I was like, that's America. It's two groups of people, and they're both protesting something. They don't agree on what they're protesting, but that's America. But it's just kind of an interesting time where even, they went back to Gore when the Supreme Court said, he's like, okay, he just said, okay, I concede. I don't agree with it.
He said recently, I did everything I could short of violence, right? Like he went as far as he could. The United States Supreme Court says we're done. It's done. It's over. Now Trump hasn't gone that far yet, right? So he's going to go until I guess he's going to treat this like a criminal conviction, and he's going to go until the courts won't let him go any further, which is, I guess, plausibly acceptable. It's not the American tradition, but it's he has the funds and he has the ability to do it.
I think, looking into the crystal ball, Republicans will hold the Senate just barely. That's my prediction right now. Okay, we've got 50 Republican senators, 48 Democrat senators. Things hinge on the 2 elections in Georgia.
Yep. You have one very much newcomer, and you have a long-term. Is it David Perdue? David Perdue, who's been serving in the Senate for a long time.
That's right. Whereas
the Perdue
Kelly
name
was an appointed replacement.
Yes, the Perdue name's been around for a very long time.
That's right.
In Georgia politics, Sonny Perdue, David Perdue, all of them.
So see, Mitch McConnell only needs to win one of the 2 Georgia Senate seats to maintain the Republican majority in the Senate.
Yeah.
However, if Democrats win them, then it'll be 50-50, and Vice President-elect Harris will then become the tiebreaker.
Until in Dakota's horrible scenario, she's president, and then God only knows what happens to the Senate.
Right.
I have somehow been added to a text distribution list. I don't know if I visited the World of Coke one too many times in Georgia, but there's a database that thinks that I'm a registered voter in Georgia and a Republican. So I get multiple texts and phone calls every day urging me to save the Republican Senate in Georgia. Constantly.
Yeah, and I've heard that all the money that was going into all the races is now going down there. So at least we got to wake up.
It needs to.
We got to wake up on Wednesday after the election, and we got to stop seeing political ads. And for them, it just doubled down even harder.
It's the political epicenter. They have the recount going on, plus they have 2 U.S. Senate seats. You never have 2 U.S. Senate seats at the same time. Now they have it twice in a month.
Mm-hmm. And now, they need to be spending all their money. I mean, Georgia is the only thing that's going to keep us from having a blue presidency, a blue House, and a blue Senate. It all comes down to Georgia.
And the House is
it's very narrow.
Blue.
Yeah,
it's
very narrow.
Not all the races have been called yet. New York and California, there's still a couple of outstanding races. But even so, Nancy Pelosi is speaker by only a single-digit difference.
Yeah.
And so I fully predict that Republicans will retake the House in 22.
Yeah.
In midterms, the incumbent president normally loses seats.
That's correct. And I'm also going to predict that you libertarians are going to get your wish in 22. Donald Rainwater, I predict, is going to run for Secretary of State and hit the magical 10% threshold.
We'll see.
That's my prediction at this point.
We've certainly been trending in the right direction. It's been a phenomenal ascent here the last few years, over 11%. We still continue to get numbers in, so the percentage that Don got in the last in the previous race, we don't know what the final number is, but it would have been
statewide. It's 11%,
11.5, I believe.
Okay,
yeah. The I guess the other takeaway I have is that Republicans are kind of going to go back into the wilderness a little while if Biden is in place, and it's the opportunity to reset. So the question is that if you've got the prediction hat on, Nate, is in 2024, is this going to look like the party of Trump that's happened in the last 6 years, or is the GOP going to change and reshape itself again, and you're going to find some new leadership?
I predict the Republican Party will go back to its roots in free trade, and Mike Pence is the logical person to lead them back to that. In addition, personally, I would rather have Mike Pence as the face of the Republican Party than Mitch McConnell.
Sure. So what names do you think, if you're handicapping, obviously we're 4 years out, it's never too early to start. You think Pence is there? Who do you think are the other leading Republican voices as they get into the presidential sweepstakes?
Former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley.
Yep.
Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida.
Little Marco.
Those are the ones I see right now.
Yeah, there have been talks about Marco Rubio. There's also been talk of Mark Cuban coming over to the Republican side.
That'll be interesting.
He's called himself a libertarian for quite some time, but now
Mark Cuban's been very fluid with his political affiliations.
But he just recently
Most people that wealthy are.
Yes.
he just recently teased something about running for president in 2024 as a Republican.
The dark horse name I'll toss in there for you too is the South Dakota governor,
okay.
Noem. I think
Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem. She, I visited her congressional office. I got a picture outside of her office about 4 years ago, and on one of my trips to D.C. And now she's the governor of South Dakota, and she's been a rising star.
What about Condoleezza Rice? Do you ever foresee her peeking her head back in?
She could, but she is going to have to do something in the interim to get her name out again. She's been
doing
out of the scene for a little too long.
She's doing
now.
something in the private sector right now. I can't remember. I really like her.
Yeah, she'll have to raise her profile before she can get back in the game.
What do you think is going to happen with the other interesting scenario that's going to play out over the next few months is cabinet appointments for Joe Biden. There's already, assuming Biden comes into play, you've got an appointment, which is what literally sent Blagojevich to jail, was when Obama went to the presidency. He tried to essentially sell off. He got caught saying that a Senate seat is too valuable to just a waste, so he wanted something in return for it. So the California Senate seat that Harris has now is going to be of issue. And then you could potentially have other Senate seats, senators appointed to the cabinet.
That's correct. Elizabeth Warren, she's a prime candidate for the cabinet, I would say.
Bernie Sanders for labor, possibly. There was rumor of that the other day.
Yeah, there was.
That'd be scary.
Dick Cheney is a top foreign policy advisor.
I do know Congressman Cedric Richmond from New Orleans. He was tapped to be, I believe, just a White House counsel or something like that.
Yeah. The counselor to Biden, the official White House counsel, the attorney, was actually an Alito staff. So I can't remember the name. I don't have it in front of me now, but Judge Alito, the conservative Republican, this person had been an aide to Alito and then was the official counselor during the election throughout the campaign, and now has taken the same job for the White House. So you do have some bipartisanship that's coming through. But it's interesting to watch these, because if you have Senate seats, when it leads to a special election or somebody getting appointed, you don't know what's going to happen. You have an incredibly thin margin.
Right.
Jeff Sessions was the senator from Alabama. He joined the Trump administration, and that's how you got Senator Doug Jones, and that moved a Republican seat to the Democrats.
Sure.
So you just don't know. It's crazy things aren't quite settled yet. I don't know if that's interesting to you, Zach. You're a patron. You're going to have to listen to this as usual later, but this is the chess pieces that I look at that I go, man, this part's going to be wild.
It's fascinating to see, because if you pull somebody out of a seat that they're elected, then there's no guarantee you're going to put somebody in there that's going to be able to resonate with voters when they come time for a reelection. You could set yourself up for a not great situation potentially, especially if you're going to have depends on how long till they're coming up. That seat's up for reelection. So.
And that's the situation in Georgia, is they had a retirement and they had to do a special election. So
that's correct. Johnny Isakson resigned midterm due to health reasons, and Kelly Loeffler was appointed to fill out the remainder of his term. Was it the remainder of his term? Or no, just until the special election can be held.
So that'll be another short term.
Isakson had just been reelected in 2018.
Right. So her seat, she'll have to run a number of times essentially to actually get a full term. This is to fill that term, and then once again it'll come up.
She would have to run again in
2 years
24.
or 4 years. Yeah.
That's why they have 2 Senate seats up at one time.
Right. Yeah. Because you have class 1, 2, and 3 senators, which is literally how they get spaced out every.
And she's just, it's a special election for her, whereas it's the regular 6-year election for Purdue.
for the Purdue seat.
She's getting the extra super special.
Oh, she's getting the extra. Yeah. Sometimes these guys, they get appointed in a caucus, the caucus thing, and they're there for 3 or 4 years, and nobody really knows. And then they finally have to see the voters. She's incredibly new, and she's just running for Senate multiple times.
Then, speaking of being appointed, Victoria Spartz, Congresswoman-elect Victoria Spartz, was a state senator.
Yes.
But she was never elected to the state senate.
Exactly.
When Luke Kenley resigned midterm,
she won the caucus
to replace him.
Yep. Which gives her the jumping off point to do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Indiana doesn't do special elections. That's something that folks don't see.
They do for Congress because that's constitutionally mandated, but not for state legislature.
Yeah. So we did a special, I guess when Julia Carson passed away, they did do a special election for when Andre Carson took over.
Right.
There's your fact for the day, Dakota. Final thoughts?
I'm ready for him.
All right. Producer Chris.
Just a quick update. Seahawks are up 7-0 over the Cardinals. DK Metcalf scored the first touchdown. He was going like plus 700 or something like that. So if you made that bet, $5 bet would have paid out $40. Thank you for coming to the betting show.
I am not having a good night. The guy I had a 3-person parlay, and the guy that I bet on he didn't start.
I will also say in the MAC, I hate Ball State. You cannot score. You are pieces of garbage.
So they're back to the normal selves.
They are garbage.
All right. Well, they won. By the way, Ball State won last night. They're 2-1, and they're doing just fine. Chris is just a grumpy bettor.
First quarter, they cost me a nice, pretty penny.
Your degeneration cost you a pretty penny.
You made this.
Listen,
choice.
It is not. I am not addicted. I can stop anytime I want. I just don't want to.
All right, Mr. Zach Burcham.
Go visit L&K for your beef. Try and stay safe out there. It looks like the world's about to get shut down again. So hopefully everybody has a safe Thanksgiving. And if you do travel, at least the traffic shouldn't be too bad. I guess it'll be light, but
I don't know. I don't know what to think.
Who knows? They canceled the Christmas parade. What do I have to look forward to? I was going to wander a quarter mile down to my mom's house to sit and watch inflatables in the back of trucks.
Probably an F1 race. There's still a couple more F1 races left to go, right?
Yeah, I've gotten so far behind. The championship's already won. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, hinting like he's going to retire. But he's not going to retire. He's going for 8.
He's going to come race Indy cars.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
He's going to go full Nigel Mansell.
That would be fun.
All right, Mr. LaMar, thanks for coming out, man.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.
What do you have anything to pitch? Anything, folks? If people want to follow you, read your stuff. Anything you want to promote? Open floor. Anything we skipped over or didn't cover appropriately?
I think we've covered things fairly well this evening. Can't think of anything in particular.
Do you miss traveling?
Yes, I do.
I was going to say, because you find people from Newcastle everywhere. I was like, look, Nate's from some Newcastle. Where is he at? He's in Dubai. And like 2 days later, he's in Germany. And I was like, how does he find all these people? And he's just like, he's all over the place. And then you're like back in town for like a 4-H thing in a couple of days. And it's just like
Henry County folks are everywhere.
Apparently some people do. They say nobody gets out of this town, but apparently some people do, and they get very, very far away.
Well, that's one of the things Nate's always been talking about. Is that was one of your signature conversations was the brain drain of Henry County when you would continually.
Travis Wyke is asking for submissions for people.
I'm just saying,
speak about the brain drain.
Henry County lost me. Going to Delaware County.
You promised to return.
We'll see.
You've made the promise.
I know. I really do want to return, but no houses were available. Maybe the redevelopment commission can figure.
You want them to buy you a spec house?
Nah, I just want them to make it where it's people want to build a house here.
2 weekends a month you can bring people in.
Well, Dakota, Guffey lives in the northern state senate seat that Nate lives in. These guys could run for senate against each other, and we'll have another fun debate in here.
Good.
You never know.
And the Republican
We'll see
primary?
how things get drawn out.
I could definitely run in the Republican primary if I want to.
There's no Libertarian Party up there where he lives.
It's true. We're unaffiliated
for now.
I do have something I wanted to promote, and that is we have a yearly bazaar at the Spiceland French Church. where like vendors come in.
You still go there?
Yeah. And there was a gentleman there, and he had a display of pins sitting out on some like corrugated sheet metal. And I was looking at him, I'm like, these are really nice. And he makes them. He hand makes all these pins on a lathe. And I got to talking to him. And this fellow is from Greenfield. This one that I have in my hand right now it's bolt action. So it slides over like that. It's brass and stainless steel, and the body of the pin is made out of deer antler, and it's really, really neat. And I also got one that is made out of zebra wood, and he is in Greenfield. He has a Facebook page. It's called 141 Creations, and they're all super cheap. He is really cool. I just wanted to give him a shout out and support his business.
Do you promise not to break that?
I was going to say, you're going to treat them
pieces?
better than the pins, because every time I sit in for
this
Dakota,
one specifically because of the bolt action. It totally satisfies that fidget need that I have.
every time I
with the
fill
pin.
in for Dakota, I come in there and there's the carcass of a dead pen sitting.
This
in
one's been going for
station.
quite some time.
That is a
because
very expensive.
It also has the
pen
same
from my former
fidget factor
employer.
because I can twist
turn
it,
it.
and then I can pull it apart,
And then it'll
I
be
can
broken.
and then I can twist this part as well.
Jeremiah, you asked me if I had something to promote.
Yes.
I just thought of something. A week ago tonight, we held the 24th annual Republican Club speech contest for high school students. And next year will be our 25th anniversary, if you can believe that.
If you don't do it on a Thursday night, I will come visit as one of the original contestants coming back
Jeremiah,
with my gray hair.
Jeremiah competed in, I believe, our first contest.
Yeah, I did
the
at least 2
Iron
years.
Kettle in Sulphur Springs, correct?
I did one at the Rain Tree.
Okay.
I did one downtown at the headquarters. I believe
Okay.
we were at the headquarters. So I may have been at the second. I may not have been at the very first.
Okay.
But I know I did a couple.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I've still got savings bonds. The GOP used to give out sweet savings bonds that I think, well, hell, they're probably almost ready to cash in now.
Probably so.
I think they cost them $5 and they were going to be worth 10 in 20 years. So I think finally I can cash in on my big GOP payoff. So it's a great thing. I did see you guys had, one of my junior leaders was there.
And we had 8 compete this year.
No, in person you had 2, and then you had some
in person,
on
and
Zoom.
then 6 competed via Zoom.
Yep, awesome.
And yeah, I'd like to shout out, thank you to Libby Powell, an English teacher at Shenandoah High School, who comes through every year with us for students. And I'd like to thank Betsy Mills as well. She ran the tech and all the Zoom to make this contest work this year.
Very impressive. Yeah, it's a great thing. And I have come back a few times and checked it out, but the Thursday night thing just doesn't work. The county council counter programs us. The GOP speech contest gets us every year. It's one of these times to try again. Final thoughts from me. I had a quick story. We are dark next week, Thanksgiving. You guys have to just go back and listen to a best of. You go back and listen to about episode 2 or 3 and see how terrible we were. Episode 2 is the very first one without Spangle actually supervising. So episode 2, if you want to go back and hear early OG, that's the Lost in the Wilderness podcast.
I think Audrey was on that episode.
I think so. Audrey used to hang out with us. She was so much fun. We are closing down the camping season. Winterized last week. I know I need to put my battery away, so I want to put it on a battery tender, Zach.
Yep.
A battery maintainer. I have one for my boat, and now I need one for the camper. So I said, all right, I'm going to buy one. I looked on Amazon.com, and a product that should be $25 was back ordered. And I said, oh, okay, I'll just try it again later. I looked again. Now it's in stock, and it was like $48. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that's the rough thing about Amazon. Prices fluctuate.
Instantly, things change in the markets. The market told me I'm going to look somewhere else. So I said, okay, I'm going to buy something from Walmart.com. Very first time in ages I've used Walmart. And they don't have Prime, so you have to order at least $35 worth of stuff. My purchase was like $29. So I'm like, all right, if I add $6 more, I'll get free shipping. I ordered it, paid, done. It sends me an email about 3 minutes later. I ordered some air fresheners because we're taking this road trip. I said, I'll get some air fresheners for the car. About 3 minutes later, it says, hey, we're going to split this into 2 orders. We're going to deliver because some of this is in your local store. I literally had like 2 hours later, the air freshener showed up in a Walmart bag with a label on it, and they ran it over from the local store and delivered it in front of my house, took a picture of my front door, and left it there.
Wow.
And they're sending the battery tender from California. That's amazing service. I didn't really care for the I didn't need the air fresheners anyway. They were just the extra thing that they're going to throw in the box to make it go.
Yeah, before Prime, that's how we did on Amazon. Bought a pin or two.
Right.
Hitting the $35.
So I don't know. Maybe this is just to get me hooked on the thought of, buying more stuff from Walmart, and maybe shit'll show up that day. But they went from having, I sell stuff that gets shipped all the time. They went from having one shipment where it could all come from one place for free to now they're sending the item that they wouldn't send all alone. They're sending it by itself. And they had some guy just literally drive across town for nothing.
Sounds interesting. Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Craziness. So I wasn't sure if this
Episode
happened to
2.
anybody else yet.
Vegas recap Syrians and United. Jeremiah Morrell. April 18th, 2017. Jeremiah Morrell and Dakota Davis sit down with Patrick Calvert.
Pat Calvert, yes.
Of the Ball State Daily News to discuss Jeremiah's trip to the left coast, United Airlines PR disaster. Patrick explains the Syrian war, and we discuss the Moab.
It's probably been that long since we've talked foreign policy. It's been 182 episodes since we've tried, and it may be another 100 before I'm brave enough to try it again. Yeah, I did the same thing Nate did. I went to Las Vegas, and I'm in a casino, and there was Pat Calvert from Newcastle. So it does happen. It does happen, and he lives there now. And now he lives there.
Wow.
All right, that's enough of this. Thank you guys so much. We will see you all in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty, which is part of the We Are Libertarians Network. I am Chris Spangle, and I am the founder of this network, and I invite you to listen to all of our shows, which you can find at WeAreLibertarians.com or by searching for these in your podcatcher. The flagship show is the We Are Libertarians podcast, where we apply libertarian principles to current events. The Brian Nichols Show is a conversation amongst Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, as they talk about what is happening in the news. And we have many other podcasts like The Chris Spangle Show, Upward, The Cost, Raw Audio Politics, Miranda's World, and Tad Talk, which is quite a ride. So check all of these out. Go to WeAreLibertarians.com and you can check out all of our great podcasts. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at WeAreLibertarians.com.